Hello, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Always Compete Seahawks podcast. My name is Sam. Thanks for joining today. I obviously have been taking a little break, have been getting things worked out. There were times where the Seahawks weren't that great this year, and I wasn't super motivated to talk about them, and I was busy. First year of college, trying to find a job. I have some of those things in order now, and now I really want to talk Seahawks football. I really want to get back to doing this, and I'm looking forward to doing it. And luckily, we got some big news yesterday that really gives me something good to talk about. Ryan Grubb, the offensive coordinator of the Seattle Seahawks, has been fired after just one season with the team. He was a kind of a guy that was hyped up coming into the year, a college coach, coached at Washington last year under Kalen DeBoer, and that Washington team had a lot of success. You saw Michael Penix Jr., Rome Odunze, Jalen Polk, McMillan, all those guys get to the league this year, and they all had success to varying degrees, but they all had some success, especially Michael Penix, who kind of found his stride a little bit at the end, ended up taking the job from Kirk Cousins in Atlanta. But Ryan Grubb came from Washington. He was a kind of like a rising star, not only in the college game but also in the NFL game, and it was a signing that was very much hyped up from day one. It was a signing that people were really excited about, people were talking about, and people were saying, "Well, this is the type of innovation that we are going to need on the team. We're going to need college innovation. We're going to need fast-paced play style. We're going to need things that will really build this team up and innovate." Whereas Pete Carroll was old school, Mike McDonald and Ryan Grubb were going to be new school. And that's what a lot of people were really looking forward to with this hire. And obviously, things did not really work out. I'm going to get into my opinion on the firing. I'm going to get into, do I think it was the right move? I'm going to get into why I think it happened and maybe some potential names that I would like to see. This is obviously just very kind of uh, looking at the cover of the book rather than reading it. I'm not going to necessarily know everything, and I'm not necessarily going to know who they're going to want to hire. And that's another big thing that I'm really interested to see. Who is the name that the Seahawks want? Who are going to be some names that they might want? That news will come out, and I will have more content for you guys as those names start to come out in the seasons to in the weeks and days to come. However, let's get into first my opinion on the firing. To me, Ryan Grubb always felt a little bit out not only out of his depth, but a little outmatched in the NFL. I think it was apparent in a lot of these games in the season where it wasn't just like every game was a bloodbath. It wasn't like, oh, from day one, it was apparent that Ryan Grubb was just not ready for the moment. And, I'm not going to say that, but there are a lot of games here that really jump out to me as far as it goes for Ryan Grubb. The first thing that really struck me about Grubb and the things that I just noticed right away was his use of spread. He used spread to what I would call a concerning degree. I feel like there will be a lot of third and shorts, a lot of first and tens where we're coming out in spread, which I was not really a fan of, especially considering that the plays that he was running out of spread were frankly not all that creative and not all that effective most of the time. He had a lot of plays that even in spread, Gino would just be standing back there and not a single person would pop open. It was a problem a lot, just people not getting open in this offense. There would be a lot of times where Gino would force it in, and that's maybe why he had 15 picks this year. Obviously, I'm not saying all 15 picks are on Ryan Grubb, but there are a lot of plays where Ryan Grubb called, nobody got open. Gino had to try to force it in, and it's an interception, and those really pile up. And I think if you look at some of these games that really just call back, where I'm like, man, this team could not score. I look at that Green Bay game. I look at that Green Bay game. They were coming off of four straight wins. They were really starting to get hot. And then the team comes out. They have 14 first downs. They have 200 yards of total offense. They have 3.7 yards per play. Geno throws for 150 yards. He ends up getting hurt. Sam Howell comes in. He's totally ineffective. In the run game, we ran the ball 16 times in a game that Green Bay ran the ball 34 times. Maybe you can argue, hey, the game kind of got away from you there. Like the game escaped. You gotta have to pass the ball a lot because you were down early. I understand that, but the second that you abandon all sort of the game plan that you had going in and perhaps trying to run the ball effectively, especially coming off of that second Cardinals game where Zach Charbonnet really found something. He really found something in that game, and I think I was really looking to continue on that, and instead the offense was just totally ineffective. I think that was really a big start as to why Grubb was like really starting to struggle. It's just because he was not very good at adjusting, and we can also look at some other games here. Another game that I immediately think about is that Giants game. That Giants game, the game that most people probably think about this year when they think about blown opportunities. This has to be up there. If you look at the team stats, the Seahawks, they had 300 yards of offense, but they had less yards per play than the Giants. They couldn't pass the ball. Geno Smith was the leading rusher, and he had 72 yards rushing, though. If you look at other running backs who ran the ball, Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet combined for 20 yards on 7 carries. 30 yards and 7 carries. It was really Geno who was carrying the route, running the ball. That's what he was doing. Geno got sacked 7 times. We threw the ball 40 times in this game. And sure, that was a game also where, the Giants were doing well, but at halftime it was tied. And then in at the end of the third quarter, it's 20-13. I don't see that as a world where all of a sudden you have to start running the football. I mean, just slinging the football around because you're down by 7 going into the fourth quarter. And I think that's another big reason as to why Grubb ended up kind of seeing his fate sealed here in the last few weeks, where Mike McDonald, when he came in, he was asked, what is his philosophy on the offensive side of the ball? What does he like to do on offense? Not what he likes to do on defense. He's obviously a defensive guru, but he was asked, hey, in your hiring of a head coach or in your hiring of an offensive coordinator, what do you want? And he said, I want to run the goddamn football. And I think in in a lot of Seahawks fans' minds, when he says run the football, you're like, oh, here's Pete. Here's Pete again. Oh, it's like a Pete Carroll copy, like McDonald, right? But I never really saw it that way. I thought especially when he brought in Ryan Grubb, I imagined it as, oh, so this is going to be a guy they're going to want to run, but Grubb is a college coach. Washington was a pretty creative running team. They want to run the ball and they want to run it creatively. They want to fit in some stuff that are going to get them some easy yards. When did we see Grubb mix in anything of real value on the running side of the ball, where like the games were immediately from the first snap? It's like, oh, the Seahawks are running today and they're running good. Sure, when you're dealing with a just a terrible offensive line, that will happen. I will acknowledge that. But there are some games where I'm just looking at ESPN. Leading rusher in the Patriots game, Zach Charbonnet with 38. Leading rusher in the San Francisco game, Kenneth Walker with 32. Leading rusher in the Buffalo game, Geno Smith with 16. The Seahawks had one player run for 100 yards. Scratch that. The Seahawks had one player run for 60 yards or more from weeks 11 to 18. And that was Zach Charbonnet in that second Cardinals game where he ran for 134. Other than that, the highest total was the Rams game last week where Zach Charbonnet ran for 59 yards. And sure, maybe you can talk about, oh, well, it's a team effort and you're not really getting the full scope, but Still, I mean, you're in those games. It's not like Zach Charbonnet is also running for 50 yards. Most of these carries, especially in that Bears game, for those who sat through and watched that Bears Thursday night game, after the first drive, like they were running the ball really well, and they were really asserting themselves. And Kenny McIntosh had a couple nice runs, and Zach Charbonnet had a couple nice runs. And then they just could not run the ball for the rest of the game. And it was so confusing when there were so many runs that were just handoff dead, handoff dead, handoff dead. Like instantaneously, the ball is given to Charbonnet or Kenny McIntosh, and you're like, well, this isn't going anywhere. That just can't happen. Ultimately, I think it came down to the simple fact that Ryan Grubb was not the fit. He did not run the ball the way Mike McDonald wanted him to. He did not call plays the way Mike McDonald wanted him to. I think he ran too much spread. I think that's a college thing. Running spread this often is a college thing. You can't really do that in the NFL, especially when your offensive line is horrible. You can do that in college when you have a when you have three-star receivers and you have a quarterback and you're playing some Sun Belt team like Coastal Carolina, and you could say, all right, well, we can do whatever we want regardless of how good our offensive line is. But in the NFL it's different. Everybody is the best of the best. You have to coach to the best of the best, and it's not just that. I've seen a lot of people saying that, oh well, he was never given a fair shot the because of the offensive line. This is a John Schneider issue. This is an offensive line issue. Ryan Grubb is a good coach. They made a mistake in firing him. I agree with that to a point. There is an obvious lack of ownership of the problem with the offensive line. I think I think John Schneider needs to own up to that at one point and say, "Hey, like I'm sorry. This is my problem. We're going to go fix it." I agree with that. I it's to an extent. Where you kind of lose me is when you will say that Ryan Grubb, for instance, had absolutely nothing to do with the fact that Geno Smith was getting sacked so much when he refuses pretty much at every turn to take pressure off of the offensive line and set up some easier stuff. He would come out and spread. Why are you running spread so much when your offensive line cannot hold blocks for that long? And it's not just that. He would call plays that not just were in spread, but were long developing. And Gino did not have an immediate route to throw to. It was apparent in the Rams game where, like even the offensive line then could not handle the Rams' backup defensive lineman, which is crazy in itself. But that, like, I'm going to pass by that and just say, like, Grubb did not do any favors. As a coach, you can't go out there and play. As a coach, you don't make the personnel decisions that often. That's typically up to the GM. Some coaches are different. For instance, like if you're Bill Belichick when he was coaching in New England, you can decide who's on the team, who's getting hired, who's getting cut, that kind of stuff. Mike McDonald can't do that. The GM, John Schneider, does that. So, and Ryan Grubb can't do that either, especially Ryan Grubb, where he's an offensive coordinator. They don't call the shots. But regardless, as a coach, your job is to coach to what your team has and to coach to what fits your team and to coach what your team can really do. And he was trying to call a college offense and not just a college offense in Washington last year that had a very good offensive line. He's trying to bring that to the NFL with a team that does not have the same offensive line, where you're not. Washington had a lot of lay down games last year. They had a lot of games where they could straight up lay down. They would score 30 by halftime, and then they could bench their starters. You don't do that in the NFL. Even against the Bears, who were rollovers, you can't do that. And instead, he never adjusted. He never made it easier for his offensive line. He never made it easier for his quarterback, and I think that's why he's fired today. And I think all of those reasons are why I think this was the right move. I think that Grubb is a good coach. I think he's probably going to go be an offensive coordinator somewhere. and he is going to blow it up. And I'm not talking in the NFL, I'm talking in college. And good for him. I wish him all the best. I have no ill will towards Ryan Grubb. It's not like he's Ken Norton Jr. or Clint Hurt, someone who I just have disdain for as a coach. It's not necessarily that. I think it was just he wasn't ready. He wasn't ready. He probably won't be ready for a little while. I doubt he'll get another opportunity anytime soon. And I think he has to just get better as a college coach. And next time, maybe when he comes to the NFL, he will be adjusted. He will know what to do, and maybe he'll make the best out of it. But I think it's wrong place, wrong time. And I just think that's all it is. And I agree with the move. I agree with the firing, and I'm happy it happened because I think it will ultimately make the Seahawks a more competing, well-sustained offense and overall team in 2024 or in 2025, I suppose. But now the real question is, who do you want to go out and replace Grubb with? Because it's not like offensive coordinators really grow on trees. The good ones either become head coaches or they're still hired. And you can't just go to other teams and just pick off their offensive coordinators. You have to request to interview them. Teams are not going to give up their good offensive coordinators. It's just not likely. I remember a few years ago, before the Seahawks hired Shane Waldron, they were like, "Hey, Bills, Brian Dable, we like him a lot. Can we talk to him?" And they were like, "No." So like you're not going to be able to get good OCs. Frankly, I was hoping Dable would have been fired because I like Dable as a coach. As for who I'm looking at now, I have not really come to a clear-cut decision here. Now kind of like a pipe dream name. I think my pipe dream name is Doug Peterson. He's experienced. He is a proven coach. Even with Jacksonville, he made the playoffs one year. He won a Super Bowl with Philadelphia. He is a good play caller. He's been around the NFL for a long time. He would kind of be the direct antithesis to Ryan Grubb as a offensive coordinator. He is from Washington. I think that's maybe the one thing that gives you a shot to him maybe being an offensive coordinator here. However, I just don't think it's likely. I think he's more likely to retire rather than to become an offensive coordinator. But I think if he does become an offensive coordinator, I do not understand why Seattle will not make that call. They should definitely at least make the call and see what he's like. Because I think if we're talking about experience, if we're talking about guys who know what they're doing, Doug Peterson is perhaps at the top of that list as for who is readily available. Jake Peetz is another name that people are talking about. Peetz was hired from Los Angeles last year, and it was kind of like a big deal thing because he was kind of seen as a rising star, potential offensive coordinator candidate for a lot of teams, and and it was kind of a surprise that he would leave LA, that LA would let him leave, and he would come to a division rival. And many people were perhaps saying that he would get hired as an offensive coordinator this cycle. Mike McDonald has been very praise heavy for Jake Peetz. I think he might fit more what he wants. I think he's been around Sean McVay, and I think that's a automatic plus for a lot of these guys. Obviously, Shane Waldron, it seems to be the legitimate only exception because we're seeing so many of these guys go out and have success. Kevin O'Connell, we're seeing Zach Taylor, we are seeing Liam Cohen, who is with the Rams, he is now with the Bucks. He has been blowing it up as an offensive coordinator. He might get a head coaching job this offseason. We're seeing guys have success coming from the McVay system. I think Jake Peetz perhaps could be that guy. He's in-house. The players know him. Maybe that kind of helps because I think the players did like Grubb, and I think him leaving does kind of hurt them. But however, I think that getting a guy in-house like Jake Peetz could perhaps alleviate that concern as for how the players might feel about Grubb leaving. Looking at this just kind of list here that some websites have put forth. Like if, for instance, we were to look, let's see what 12th Man Rising said about this. Marcus Brady, I remember him. Marcus Brady, I believe, was with the uh, LSU Tigers at one point. So that's another one. Or is that Joe Brady? I don't know. It's one of the two. Regardless, I think that The Seahawks should be looking for someone with experience, someone who's been around the NFL for a while. I think the college thing would be a big mistake. Another name I've kind of heard floated out there is Josh McCown. I don't know how I would feel about Josh McCown. He's obviously a name. People know him. He's been around the league for a long time. He is the current quarterbacks coach for the Minnesota Vikings. We've obviously seen their quarterbacks have a lot of success. Sam Darnold had a ton of success there. Coaching under Kevin O'Connell from that Sean McVay tree always is beneficial. I think that that would be another generally good move, and I would have to see how he would call plays, but as of right now, the real candidates here are a complete unknown outside of Jake Peetz. It's pretty much confirmed that Jake Peetz will be a major candidate in this. He's in-house. Mike McDonald likes him. He was perhaps going to become an offensive coordinator somewhere else soon. Maybe McDonald sees a special talent in him and he thinks, hey, we're just going to keep you here and make sure no one else can take you. That's going to be interesting to see. I think that other than that, though, no one really knows what's going to go on. Is Doug Peterson going to even want to do it? Are some of these former offensive coordinators like, uh, you know, Ken Dorsey or anyone like that, are they going to want to do it? I had a thought about Byron Leftwich, the former Buccaneers offensive coordinator who was there under Tom Brady. Tom Brady did like him a lot, and he just interviewed for the Patriots head coaching job today. He is out of a job right now. I think that would be a kind of a sneaky good experience candidate to interview. He's a Super Bowl winning offensive coordinator. Obviously, Bruce Arians was calling all those plays, but regardless, that experience is valuable. I think that would be a sneaky good interview to have. But in general, my pipe dream is Doug Peterson for the experience that he would bring to the table, for the results that he has before. And I think it's gonna be a very interesting search. And I will probably end up doing a tier list video once we get maybe 5 or 6 legitimate candidates out. But for now, that is all we know. That is my opinion on the Ryan Grubb firing. I think it's a good thing for the team. I wish Grubb the best. I think he's a good coach. The NFL is not the place for him right now. That is my opinion. I think that John Schneider needs to build the offensive lineup. We will definitely be having some mock drafts coming up soon. We will absolutely be having some free agency predictions. I think I'm going to do a trade or cut segment coming up in the next few days here. So just stay tuned for that. In the meantime, thank you guys for watching. Content will be coming very, very soon. More content. I'm very excited to make some stuff for you guys. And I hope you stay tuned. I hope you're ready to talk some Seahawks, talk some Seahawks roster moves, talk some Seahawks coaching moves. And thank you guys for listening. I hope you enjoy your day. I hope you enjoy your week. Peace out.